Today on Ultimate Throwdown CVV Cell vs. Virus Edition, we shall be discussing the central role of power in Hervé Guibert's novel To the Friend Who Did Not Save My Life. We have two experts here today, Pacwoman and Wilma the White Blood Cell, to argue the thesis regarding the extent of control that HIV/AIDS has over the protagonist's life. They will take into consideration the protagonist's homosexuality and how this plays a role in the power struggle between the individual and the virus. Wilma, represented as a white blood cell, symbolizes the body's fight against disease and infection. She will be arguing that Hervé's diagnosis of HIV leads him to take control of his life, and as a result, does not become a passive bystander to the implications that come along with the disease. She will argue that Guibert's novel leaves behind a representative part of himself, a legacy. On the other side, Pacwoman will argue that HIV comes to dictate Hervé's life. His everyday decisions and relationships, romantic and friendships, change because of the diagnosis, which is something that is out of his control. She will argue that his ability to function is controlled by the extent of the infection and the stage of the disease. She will look at how HIV changes Hervé's views of himself and his sexuality. It should be an interesting debate, and it appears that tensions are already on edge. Okay, women, who would like to start the debate? Hi!
Excuse me, but I will start. I do not know how one could possibly think that Guibert has control of his life when HIV has become such an essential part of it. The impact of the disease on his life is seen right from the start. At the beginning of the book, Guibert discusses the uncertainty that comes into his life after he is diagnosed with HIV. Hervé Guibert sure doesn't like to use long sentences. Anyways, back to my point. Here, Hervé expresses the ambiguity of his future, in large part because of the disease. The nature of the virus has made his life unpredictable. He is uncertain to what the future holds because he has had such an up and down battle with the virus, and as a result has experienced a wide range of emotions. Hervé then goes on to claim that this book he is writing is also based on uncertainty. I have a sense of the structure of this new book I've been harboring within myself all these last weeks, but I don't know how it will unfold in its entirety. I can imagine several endings, all of which fall for the moment under the heading of premonition or heartfelt desire, but the whole truth is still hidden from me, and I tell myself that this book's raison d'etre lies only along this borderline of uncertainty so familiar to all sick people everywhere. Here, a parallel is presented relating the structure of the novel to Guibert's life. Both have vague, unknown futures, which are due to the disease. Although we cannot take everything Guibert says as the truth, this parallel that suggests that the two, his life and the novel, are related. It is something that is almost on his mind, seen by the references in almost every chapter. HIV has taken control of his life. I don't see how someone could not acknowledge this point.
I disagree. Guibert directly references HIV and AIDS at various points throughout the book, and in doing so shows that it does not control him. As you know, there was a lot of stigma associated with the initial outbreak of HIV/AIDS due to the fear of the unknown and the virus's association with homosexuality. Guibert's ability to verbalize the issue of HIV and directly reference it, despite the unreceptive environment, shows that the disease does not have the power over him. People shy away from articulating things they fear. Look at Harry Potter. Voldemort is referenced throughout as he who must not be named. Harry is the one that is not afraid to speak his name, showing his courage. Or, something that may be a little bit more applicable but not as fun as Harry Potter, is Oscar Wilde's use of the quote, "the love that dare not speak its name," a phrase that has oftentimes become associated with homosexuality. It expresses the difficulty associated with putting homosexuality into words, due to the fear associated with coming out. The fact that Guibert can directly reference HIV and his sexuality shows that it does not control him.
Listen, just because Guibert directly references HIV and his sexuality does once again not mean that HIV or AIDS is not controlling his life. Take, for example, this passage where Hervé realizes that the virus acts as an equalizer. He has just started to come to terms with his diagnosis and is seeking treatment at the hospital when he recognizes someone.
I recognized behind one of the panels of frosted glass that came up only shoulder high the semi-profile of a man I knew with whom I had dealings with, and I immediately turned away, appalled at the idea of having to exchange that look of understanding and forced equality with a man whom I found completely contemptible.
Guibert acknowledges that the disease has caused this man, mind you, a man that he is not quite fond of, to be his equal. It is not a happy thought, but one he has no control over it. This disease humbles an individual. It does not matter on one's social standing or class. It places everyone on the same playing grounds. There is no cure. All those infected will die the same death, regardless of who they are. The virus is the equalizer. It dictates the lives of the infected. I'm glad you also brought up the part regarding Hervé's sexuality, because it is something I was hoping to touch on. Hervé connects the virus with his homosexuality, and this in turn impacts his relationships with others. He discusses how his relationships with Jules has changed after both are diagnosed.
Jules and I now found it really difficult to fuck each other. Of course, we no longer risked anything but a reciprocal recontamination, but the virus loomed up between us like a repellent specter, whereas before I'd always found Jules' body powerful and splendid whenever he undressed. Now I noticed he lost weight and looked almost pitiful.
The virus has affected Hervé's feelings for Jules, his long-term partner, and as a result has dampened his ability to express his sexuality. It serves as a wall between them, preventing them from connecting in the same manner that they once did. Hervé begins to see himself in Jules and is repulsed.
2 cases of AIDS were just too much for a single man, since I now had the feeling we were part of one and the same being, with no mirror between us, and that it was my voice that answered when we spoke on the phone together, and that it was my body I reconquered every time I took his in my arms, and these 2 centers of latent infection had become intolerable within a single body.
Hervé sees himself reflected in Jules, and dealing with the combination of the two is just too much to handle. He sees his homosexuality as a cause of the virus, not just because he was an infected partner. Early on in the book, Hervé reflects on the spread of the disease and comments on the sexual encounters of some of his gay friends and says,
"Yet at the same time we were all catching the disease from one another's bodies. We would have caught leprosy if we could have."
Hervé sees the disease as a result of his sexuality, and ironically, it goes on to control his sexuality.
No, no, no. HIV has made Guibert take control of his life. He hasn't lost any power in the situation. Throughout the novel, Guibert seeks medical help. He is actively combating the disease. This is not a weak man who will passively let the disease take control. He goes to numerous doctor's appointments and even seeks alternative treatment through Bill. He does not sit back and wait for the virus to take hold.
Can't you see that your point is just strengthening mine? The fact that he needs to seek treatment is because of his diagnosis. How he functions is determined by his white blood cell count. He cannot control that. This dictates his feelings. After learning that he has a temporary remission midway through the book reflects,
I felt something like a breath of fresh air, a feeling of escape, a broadening of my horizon. The most painful phase of awareness in a fatal illness is probably the loss of distance. All of far reaches everywhere like an inexorable blindness as time passes and simultaneously dwindles away.
The information that his T4 cell count is high dictates his feelings of relief, yet he cannot control the disease ravaging within. He is forced to partake in various systems, worldwide and pharmacological. He must become dependent on the system, seeking medical attention for his various aches and pains. At the end of the novel, Guibert is near death. Look at the last chapter.
The book is closing in on me. I'm in deep shit. Just how deep do you want me to sink? Fuck you, Bill. My muscles are melted away. At last, my arms and legs are once again as slender as they were when I was a child.
This does not sound like a man who is in control of his life. It sounds like someone who is suffering miserably and can do nothing about it. Look, he even blames Bill. Fuck you, Bill, he says, signifying the belief that someone other than himself has a role in his eventual demise. If he has the power, how do you explain this?
I think we both can agree that at the end of the book, Hervé is near death, a death that I acknowledge is due to the virus. However, you are overlooking one incredibly important point. The HIV/AIDS does not completely destroy Hervé, even if it does lead to his death. He leaves behind a legacy with the book, something that the virus cannot consume. Well, Wilma, I hate to cut you off again, but it looks like our time here is up. I know the viewers out there enjoyed this debate as much as I did, and hopefully if they have not read the novel, and therefore are incredibly lost, this will motivate them to read it. I would like to thank every one of you for being here today. Thank you.